Stories about America to read aloud. Number 12. The Pulling Bee. Many years ago in the Green Mountains of Vermont there lived a horse called Little Bub. He was brave, hard-working, and loyal, but few people thought he amounted to much. They said he was too small for a workhorse, and too sturdy for a racehorse, and too shaggy-looking for anyone to want to ride. Nobody knew who his parents were or where he came from. They didn't even know when he was born. Some people said it was in 1789, and some said 1790. Anyway, it was a long time ago when the country was growing up. Little Bub belonged to a schoolmaster named Justin Morgan. He was a kindly man, but he didn't really want Little Bub. He had been given Little Bub by a man who owed him some money and couldn't pay. The schoolmaster would rather have had the money than the colt, but he took Little Bub home with him, and in time the tiny reddish-brown colt grew up into a horse. Or at least, he grew into a little brown cob. That's what the schoolmaster's neighbors called Little Bub. A cob is a small, thick-set horse. Vermont farmers liked big, strong horses who could drag heavy logs and plow rocky fields and pull a carriage. They said the schoolmaster's little brown cob would never be able to do those things well. In fact, they said Little Bub wasn't worth his feed. One day, Master Morgan needed money, so he tried to sell Little Bub. People laughed at the idea of paying good money for a horse whose legs, they said, were too short to run, and whose tail was so long it kept getting tangled in his harness. Finally, the best arrangement Master Morgan could make was to rent Little Bub to a farmer. Next day, Farmer Evans came by for the horse and tied him to the back of a wagon pulled by a fat ox. Away went Little Bub to his new home. It was a wonder anyone ever heard of Little Bub again, gone off like that to work on a backwoods farm. If it hadn't been for the pulling bee at the town sawmill, probably nobody would have remembered him. But one spring afternoon, the sawmill men held a contest to see which among their horses was the strongest. A big pine log lay partly sunken in the ground a short distance from the sawmill, and the contest was to see which horse could loosen the log and pull it to the mill. So they fastened a chain to the log and then fastened the chain to a strong gray mare belonging to one of the men. "Get up!" shouted the mare's owner. The mare pulled and tugged with all her might, but she couldn't make the great log budge. Next they fastened the tug chain to a husky horse. "Get up!" yelled the black horse's master. He cracked his whip and yelled still louder, "Get up! Get up!" The black horse tried hard. He heaved and pulled and pulled and heaved, but the mighty log didn't move. One after another, all the horses were given their chance to pull the log. Not one could even make it quiver. "Guess we'll have to hitch up an ox," said an old man. "Maybe there's an ox here strong enough to haul that log. If one ox can't do it, we'll hitch up a team of 'em." Just then Farmer Evans came riding up to the sawmill on Little Bub. He heard the talk, and he said, "If this is a pulling bee, I'll enter my horse in the contest." All the men began to laugh. "That little old cob couldn't pull a switch," they said. "Wait and see," said Farmer Evans good-naturedly. "This little horse has grown mighty strong, working out at the farm." He fastened the tug chain to Little Bub. Then Farmer Evans said, "I'm ashamed to ask my horse to pull such a little load. He's been pulling bigger loads than that all day, out at the farm, and he's not even tired. 3 of you big lads get astride the log. Little Bub will pull you and the log, too." The men roared with laughter. What a joke, they thought. But 3 of the biggest men jumped astride the log. "Let's see that little brown cob pull us," they taunted. "Get up, Little Bub," said Farmer Evans. Little Bub took a deep breath. He stepped one step ahead, tightening the chain. Then he flattened on his haunches and strained forward hard. One could see his muscles bulge. Harder, harder he pulled. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. H-A-R-D-E-R, harder. The men had stopped laughing now. They were as silent and as still as the log itself, for they knew it was a tremendous load the little horse was trying to pull. Harder! Harder! The chains clanked. The log trembled. Suddenly, with a loud cracking sound, the log broke loose from the ground, and little Bub, that stout-hearted horse they had said wasn't worth his feed, pulled the great log and the three big men all the way to the sawmill without even stopping. What a commotion there was then! How those men shouted and cheered for little Bub. Hooray for Morgan's colt! Hooray for the go-ahead horse! Little Bub tossed his mane proudly. His bright eyes danced. He knew what they were saying all right. Soon everyone in Vermont had heard about little Bub, but they didn't call him little Bub any longer. They called him Justin Morgan, named for the schoolmaster who owned him. The schoolmaster was proud of him now. In time, the little horse won many races and proved he could also trot fast and pull a carriage with style and do all sorts of work without tiring. In fact, it turned out that little Bub could do anything and do it well. His fame spread from Vermont through all the nation, and he became the father of a famous family of American horses, the Morgan horse. You'll find his picture in books, and in Vermont there is a life-size bronze statue of him. And today, all over the country, on farms and ranches and wherever horses are ridden, driven, or worked, there are descendants of little Bub, or just Justin Morgan, as we know him now. All of them are wonderful horses, just like that first little Justin Morgan, who won the pulling bee and proved that he was the best horse of all.